A very good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the monthly Labourlaw update for the month of August 2021. As our normal practice, we would start with the amendments and we'll go forward with each of the segments. The Shops and Establishments Act has been, the rules and regulations there has been amended by the Manipur government with regard to especially giving stress with regard to women employment and the protection for women, and also on certain aspects of overtime and compensatory holidays. To that extent, they have made certain changes through an ordinance. The Madhya Pradesh government has amended again their rules pertaining to child labor, prohibition and regulation, wherein a child normally can be employed even if it's a family business. That's how it has been. They're bringing in saying that they should ensure that it is done without affecting the education of the child. Similarly, a child can work as an artist. So if it's going to be in some theatrical presentation, the child can be engaged. So these kind of changes they've brought in, and also they have brought in where the child engagement, if it's to be registered, the authorities will verify it with Aadhaar card or birth certificates, and that's how it has to be done. That's the update on the amendments. This is with regard to what the Bangalore Corporation has done for commercial establishments, hotels, restaurants, making it mandatory for employers to ensure that all their employees are given at least one vaccine before 31st of August 2021, and the proof for the same should be retained by the employers in the premises. We had last month seen as to how this cannot be made mandatory, and there's no law, and there's also a High Court division bench judgment which has said that it cannot be mandated by employers. So how far can this communication of the Bangalore Corporation be legally valid is a moot question that remains to be seen. The Tamil Nadu Business Facilitation Act, under the said act, the government has issued certain GOs by which it has said that time-bound registrations and renewals, so certain renewals or certain registrations has to be done within a time frame that's been fixed in terms of this GO, failing which it's a deemed registration or renewal. So to that extent, it is provided for. What is significant here is under the Contract Labor Act, the license gets an automatic instant renewal of a contractor. Similarly, a Factories Act licenses, automatic renewal. Your trade license under the Municipalities Act or the respective acts, they also get an automatic renewal. These are all automatic, instant, online renewal in a single window clearance system. So this is something that is going to change the way businesses are affected at the moment in getting licenses. It's going to become much easier. The ESA Corporation under the ESA Act has brought in a scheme wherein employees who died owing to COVID-19 would be eligible for certain benefits, provided that the employee has already been registered at least 3 months prior to his death with the online portal of ESA. His death, on the date that he's been diagnosed with COVID-19, he should have been in employment, and there should be contribution at least for 70 days. In such event, the legal heirs who are being listed out there would be entitled to the benefits. They've also given what benefit could be paid to each legal heir. So it's a spouse or the mother of the deceased employee or the son or daughter of the deceased employee. What share would go to each one of them has also been provided under the scheme. And the minimum of 1,800 rupees is what the scheme provides for, and the scheme is to be effective for a period of 2 years with retrospective effect from March 2020. So anyone who has died owing to COVID from March 2020, any employee of yours who's covered under the ESA Act, they would be entitled to the benefit. The government has also brought in a proposal of bringing in pension for small traders, shopkeepers, and self-employed persons. On attaining the age of 60 years, the persons, if they contributed and the scheme to the scheme, they would be eligible for pension, and the pension scheme itself is to be administered by the Life Insurance Corporation of India. EPFO has mandated that in all cases relating to death, pension should be approved within 3 days or settled within 3 days, and the claim should be dispatched within 7 days of receipt. The Disabilities Act 2016 in government in Tamil Nadu, the government has passed a GO. As per this GO, every commercial establishment, factory would need to have a policy on equal opportunity, and it should also maintain the records required mandated in terms of the Act and rules. Further, your policy should be registered with the state commissioner. The Directorate of Industrial Safety and Health and the Commissioner of Labor have been appointed as the nodal officers to ensure that the employers register the policies with the state commissioners. So this is a new requirement that has come about in Tamil Nadu, where you would need to have a policy, and that policy has to be registered with the state commissioner. Our next segment is a quiz on the Occupational Safety and Health Code. What does it require you to do? Does it require you to carry out test and examination of an article in the establishment, issue a letter of appointment? Does it want you to do both, or does it not want you to do either? This is the quiz question for this month, and we will see the answer at the end of the session. Interestingly, the Madhya Pradesh government is looking at a furlough scheme by which it's going to allow its employees to go on leave on half pay. And during this leave, they could take up employment elsewhere, and they could do other things. They hope to save a substantial amount because of this. And at the end of it, they could opt for voluntary retirement after the break. The Ministry of Labor, Government of India, proposes to establish a national database for unorganized workers. So various kinds of workers, like street vendors to agricultural workers to migrant workers, all these persons, are going to be a database where it's going to get captured. They aim to capture around 38 crore workers in the unorganized sector in this database. Very visual thinking by the government. We need to wait and watch. Let's wish the government all the best in this. We have been every month discussing on some topic of importance. And this month we felt we would discuss on nomination of terminal dues. Because the question is, many questions have arisen, especially in the recent past, given the COVID-19 deaths. Who is a nominee, and why is a nominee there? So what happens is, a nominee is a person who, when alive, a person can nominate to receive the benefits on his behalf on his death. Who can be a nominee? Any person can be a nominee. It is not that you have to have a blood relative or your parents or anybody. So it doesn't mean to be even a good friend of yours or a neighbor of yours. Anybody could be a nominee that you could. But normally, we tend to have a blood relative as a nominee. These are the different provisions under which nomination is required. So under the EPF Act, it is required. Under the Gratuity Act, it is required. Scheme, it is required on the Provident Fund scheme. So many times questions arise, okay, what is this nomination when we have legal heirs? So who's to be paid? Should we pay the money to the nominee or to the legal heir? Who is a legal heir? The legal heir, again, will differ. For instance, here we are trying to tell you under the Hindu Succession Act, for instance, if it's a Hindu, he's covered by the Hindu Succession Act, and the Act provides for different classes of heirs. So in class 1, a heir is there, then he would be entitled to it. If there are more than one class 1 heirs, then it will be equally distributed among them. In the absence of class 1, then it goes to class 2 heirs, or if none being present, the government takes over the property and estate of the deceased. So this is the concept of legal heir, comes in from the Hindu Succession Act. Similarly, Indian Succession Act is also there for non-Hindus, and how it goes on. So a nominee is not a legal heir. So as I said, it could be any of your friends, anyone could be as a nominee. He merely receives the money as a trustee, and then he has to hand it over to the legal heir. The other aspect is a person who's a nominee can try to get it for the legal heir. So if I'm being nominated by somebody, I know that there are legal heirs and I want the money to reach the legal heirs, I could then, on behalf of the deceased employee, make a claim to the employer saying, you owe Mr. So-and-so who's now deceased so much, please pay the money to me, being the nominee. And the employer is bound to pay the money to the nominee. But it is not that the nominee can appropriate the money. The nominee is just a legal heir. I'm sorry, he's not one of the legal heirs, and he's merely a trustee. So he would need to pass on the money to the legal heirs. This position has been made clear in various Supreme Court judgments that we have tried to point it out in this slide and then in the next slide. So they're merely a trustee. You receive it to give. So as far as the person who's to give the money, so as an employer, you need to pay the legal heirs or the nominee. Even if you're paid the nominee, it is good discharge. The legal heirs cannot come and ask you, why have you not paid me? Or alternatively, you can directly pay to the legal heirs who are to ultimately get the money and not pay the money to the nominees. Under the Code of Wages 2019, non-maintenance or improper maintenance of records are punishable with a fine up to 10,000 rupees. And under the Code on Social Security 2020, the imprisonment term has become, extended up to 1 year, and the fine could go up to 50,000. This we thought is a very interesting piece of legislation. I mean, there could be two thoughts when it comes to India. We have our holidays in India as well, which is again mostly governed by state enactments. In Japan, they have this public holiday. So if a public holiday falls on a Sunday, the following Monday becomes a national holiday, compensatory holiday rather. And then if you have a holiday, let's assume a public holiday comes on a Tuesday, then the Monday, or if the public holiday comes on a Thursday, the following Friday, they are also declared as a holiday, and it's called a citizens' holiday. So something, a very interesting concept. We are already having more than 9 holidays in most states. And do we still need something more like a citizen holiday is a moot question to be considered. One of the tech companies has come forward to pay $1,500 to each of its employees for having put up with all the hardships during the COVID times. In the case law corner, this month we would be seeing on a judgment of the Madras Division Bench, wherein it has been said that a dispute without approaching the conciliation machinery is not maintainable. Second, this is a case where the employee retired and then wanted notional promotion from a period or date in the past when he was working. The Labor Court as well as the High Court held that the scope of a 2-year dispute is very limited, and the employee cannot raise a dispute for such kind of demands like asking for promotion. Only if there is be a termination, discharge, then the question will arise. This is a judgment of Singapore, a very unique one we thought, and we thought we should share with you on how inquiries are to be looked upon. What is the liability or the expectation of an employer? Even if an employee has committed a mistake or any misconduct, how should it be done? As an employer, you are required to maintain utmost confidentiality, and you should give a minimum standards of fairness is what the code this in this what is being shared is only that to that extent of what is to be done. The compliance calendar for the month of September 2021, we would be sharing the PPT for you to have a look with more detail on what it is. Lastly, the answer for this month's quiz. You need to issue letters of appointment in terms of OS, the Occupational Safety Health Code 2020. Thank you for joining us. We will meet you again on 25th September at 4 p.m. Thank you.